what are the basic principles that should be articulating our process? Well, as you can see here, institutional change needs to be, first of all, would be nice if it can be as participatory as possible, because this is what will promote self-reflection and what will promote the reflexivity that we need to get to all those hidden and all those informal aspects of the organizational culture that we were talking our first day. And also because having a participatory approach, it will help us in defining meaningful measures. Remember that we were talking about meaningful impact. So this is something that the participatory approach will also help us to get. And it will, at some point, if it's really participatory, it will turn into self-assessment, which definitely will boost like the people's willingness to implement the measures that they have participate to create. So it also fosters appropriation, it fosters ownership. So this is really like a first important guiding principle, okay? And then it should be holistic. Remember that we have already moved from approaches focusing on women to institutional approaches. But we need to ensure that this institutional approach focus on the institutional culture in a really comprehensive way, in a structured and in a holistic way that connects all the different levels and all the different inequalities. Remember that we said that all inequalities are somehow connected. So the plan should have this view, okay, this holistic view. Because what might happen if we don't have this holistic approach is that some fundamental issues, like, for example, gender bias that we were talking about last day, or gender dimension in research and other fundamental issues can be left untouched, okay, if we don't have this approach. And we won't have that meaningful impact, again, if we tackle each issue as if it was isolated from the rest, okay? Then it should be inclusive. So this means making diversity a key issue in terms of stakeholders and of actors and people involved, but also inclusive in the issue covered, okay? And of course, this means also including, for example, resistant agents, okay? The plan is for everyone, not only for those who want a plan, okay? And it should have an intersectional approach, as we saw last day, so we can really understand and we can shed light on how different discrimination patterns and different inequalities are intersecting with each other, okay? We should do this multi-level analysis that we talked about last day to understand these complex relations between inequalities. Then the process should be visible, which means making everything visible, not only the needs that we have identified, but also making commitments visible, and making them public and formal, and of course, making results visible as well. Okay, and for this, it is important to have from the very beginning a communication plan. Okay, we should set up a communication plan for our gender equality plan to communicate all the steps that we are taking, to communicate the results, right? And a practical tip here, some of you were mentioning in your expectations that you want a practical tip. So a practical tip here would be to have a communication plan since the very beginning and to really do it in a positive account, like to have like a positive narration of the process here, okay? Then we should be flexible. The process should be flexible. The gender equality plan is nothing static, as the process or the institutional change process is neither static. It is, and it's going to be continuously evolving as the institution itself. And in the end, it's like in every aspect of life, we're just learning by doing. So here's the same. The process will constantly need adaptations, and we will be needing to redesign our actions and our steps to keep the project relevant to the context, okay, and to our current realities and any emerging situations. For instance, like we had in the Complutense University, that we had a change in the rectoral team and we had to readapt to the situation. Or, as you mentioned in one of the group, in our first session, a pandemic like we have now. So how can we readapt and redesign everything to this totally different context and situation? All right, so needs and priorities will for sure change along the way, so be flexible about that. And then the institutional change needs to be sustainable, for which a long-term approach is needed, because of course institutional change, if it's meaningful, it will take time. So, but anyway, we'll see how to think about this on our last session. And of course, last one, our institutional change process should be as feminist as possible, right? The main steps. Let's go directly into what are the main steps. Remember that institutional change, as we said very quickly last day, is a process, okay? And specifically, the gender equality plan design process is a traditional step-by-step process. So which are the main steps? The first one will be just getting started. We'll see it right now, the key aspects here, okay? Second one would be analyzing and assessing the state of play of the institution, okay, doing our gender analysis. Then the third one would be already setting up the gender equality plan. And what happens many times is that we think that we need to start here, okay, let's do a gender equality plan, so let's set it up. What actions do we need? And we don't realize that this is already a third step, okay? We have 2 steps before that if we want to do it right, okay? And these are the 3 steps that we're going to see today, okay? The fourth one would be already implementing the gender equality plan. Then the fifth one would be monitoring progress along the way and evaluating the gender equality plan. And the last one, you might think there's no place for it, but the thing is that by this point, we should be already someplace else from where we need to think what is next, okay, what comes after. And as we were saying, the gender equality plan is not a final destination, it's a way station. So from there, we keep on moving, okay, we see what's next.